Howdy folks, welcome back to Mingles with Jingles, and I still have no idea what episode number this one is. 23, 22? Whatever, doesn't matter. So yeah, back from my week off. Had a great time, and I pretty much just wasted it playing World of Warcraft. Instead of all the things I said I was going to do. Yeah, so, War Thunder, World of Tanks, what's happening? Well, patch 1.35 is coming up for War Thunder soon. I have not yet been able to get onto the development server for that, although the one thing more than anything else, I mean, there's all sorts of changes coming in patch 1.35, new aircraft being introduced across the board, aircraft being shuffled around, the P-40E's been moved up to rank 5, stuff like that across the board. But the one thing that actually interests me the most, even though I haven't been able to get onto the dev server and test it out, is area bombing targets. Finally, the kind of targets that four-engine, high-altitude, heavy bombers were actually built to bomb. They're putting them into War Thunder, so there is actually going to be a point to having B-17s and Lancasters, and I think that's fantastic news. So, what else? Oh, I've got replays working properly again. Any replays from game versions prior to patch 8.8? I should point out before we go any further, by the way, that Wargaming does not officially support replays in anything other than the current version of World of Tanks. So if your patch 8.7, 8.6, 8.5 replays aren't working, Wargaming don't care. Right? So they don't offer support for anything other than whatever the current version of World of Tanks is. And you can't watch most of those replays anyway unless you have saved and backed up your previous versions of World of Tanks. And I'm pretty sure I used to have World of Tanks backups going all the way back to patch 7.4. I don't anymore. I think the earliest version I support is patch 8.3. But prior to patch 8.8 coming out, I could just flash up a previous version replay using the previous version of World of Tanks that I had, and it would work perfectly. Something different happened in patch 8.8, something that affected every version of World of Tanks that you have. Therefore, it had to be something that was stored in the hidden system folder, or one of the hidden system folders that every version of World of Tanks accessed. And sure enough, somebody found it. It's the preferences.xml file in the hidden users folder on your C drive. Now, I'm not going to go into technical detail about what you need to do to mess around with it and change it and so on, because one, it's relatively complicated. Two, it involves messing around with hidden system files, and I don't want to be in the position of listening to people complain that, Jingles told me to mess around with this file and I've messed up my system, because I am not tech support. All you need to know, however, if this is a problem for you, and you need to be able to watch previous version replays on your machine, head over to Quickie Baby's forums, have a look for the solution, do it yourself. But I don't want people complaining in the comments that Jingles broke my PC, he said to do this. Right? I ain't tech support. I am not here to tell you how to mess around with your computer. If you want to do it, the information's there, go ahead and do it. But as you can see, it does work. I'm popping in and out of sniper mode in this replay, and it's working perfectly. It is, however, a colossal pain in the arse. The process that you have to go through, it's only really worth the effort if you absolutely definitely cannot live without your patch 8.7 or patch 8.6 World of Tanks replays. Now, obviously, I can't live without them. The YouTube channel depends on all these games that I have still to show you. They're really, really good games. So I need to do it, but it's a massive pain. Editing these files, literally every time I want to look at a patch 8.7 or 8.6 replay, I have to delete files and then recreate them and then save settings. And it only works until the very next time I run a patch 8.8 game, or just try to play World of Tanks. And then the next time I want to go back and look at a previous replay, I've got to go through the whole process again, and it's only something that you're going to be doing if you really, really love your previous version of World of Tanks games. If not, it's just too much effort. However, it works. So unfortunately, I couldn't get this fix in time for the final couple of games in the replay contest, and you had to watch those in third-person view. I couldn't get this fixed in time for the Centurion Mark 1 review. You had to watch that in third-person view. But from now on, lengthy process though it may be, I am at least able to, from now on, show you the World of Tanks games that I have saved in, you know, in the perspective which they were meant to be watched. So that's good news at least. Pain in the arse though it may be. There's also going to be some more airsoft videos soon. I managed to get up to Combat South yesterday. Had a pretty good day despite the awful humidity. I took the GoPro, so there will be some GoPro footage. Pretty amateurish though it may be. It'll be the first time I've used the GoPro, but I've learned a bit more about how I need to play in order to maximise the, you know, the filming potential of that little camera, which is great, by the way. I'm very, very impressed with the picture quality and the whole look that you get from using a GoPro camera. I'm also popping up to the woods again tomorrow, weather permitting, in order to film some reviews of more weapons and equipment. So that's all to come. Now then, back to War Thunder. My love-hate relationship with War Thunder continues. As I'm sure most of you are no doubt aware, I have had endless problems just trying to play War Thunder like anybody else. And it's not because of a problem with the game itself. The game is fantastic. I love it to bits. I love arcade battles, even though I know they are not even slightly realistic. And I love the historical battles. But as you're aware, I've just not been able to play arcade battles without being spotted, recognised and swarmed by the enemy team. So that's a problem. But it's a problem that most of you don't face because you're not YouTubers with 129,000 subscribers. I am. It's the price of fame. There's nothing I can do about it. Or so I thought. But anyway, I digress. Now, in order to avoid being swarmed by hordes of people who just want to be the one to shoot the sheriff, even though I'm not that good, I took refuge on the Russian servers where most people don't know who I am and wouldn't care anyway. Unfortunately, the standard of gameplay on the Russian servers is pretty horrific. Ramming, team killing is absolutely... I mean, it is pretty bad on the EU and North American servers, but it's positively civilized on the North American and EU servers compared to the state of just appallingly bad play and douchebaggery on the Russian servers. So it was a kind of, you know, screwed if you do, screwed if you don't situation. Well, anyway, a whole bunch of you, in fact, in one Mingles with Jingles video, there were like 2,000 comments, and almost all of them were just people saying, Jingles, just change your name. Well, I resisted doing that for a long time, for a couple of reasons. One, I'm a stubborn old bastard. Two, I'm lazy, and why should I have to go to that kind of effort just to be able to play the game the same as anybody else? Well, Jingles, you have to go to that kind of effort because you're not playing the game just the same as anybody else. You are a YouTuber with X thousand subscribers, and this is going to happen. Other YouTubers in your position just man up and change their bloody name before they put a video up, and it works for them. So I finally thought, well, you know what, screw it. I'll go ahead and do it. And it seemed like a great idea, but like most great ideas, it doesn't survive contact with the enemy. Now, at first, it did work just fine. I did have to disband the squadron that I paid 2,500 gold to form, because, well, I'll tell you what it did. A couple of players suggested this, and it was actually a very, very sneaky and ingenious idea. Apparently, it hails back from the StarCraft forums, where people would use a sort of barcode name, and what that means is they would change their name to a combination of capital I's and the letter L, so that your name in-game appeared just like a barcode strip. Great idea. The only fly in the ointment, of course, was that there is only one person in the entire world who had the squadron tag GRP, Golden Rocket Pony, and that was me, because I was the only person in that squadron. So I had to disband the squadron, because that was an obvious identifier. So pain in the arse, 2,500 gold down the tubes for creating the squadron, but it worked. It definitely 100% worked. I was able to finally play arcade battles on the EU and North American servers and have great fun doing it without constantly being just targeted by everybody on the enemy team. And that was fine. But it was never going to last. You see, the problem with changing your name in-game, and it is a pain in the arse process, but it's not that difficult and it doesn't cost you anything to do it. But the problem with changing your name in-game is that the name that you have in War Thunder is also the name that you have on the Gaijin Entertainment forums. And I have a sticky thread on the Gaijin Entertainment forums, which is probably how many of you playing War Thunder found my videos in the first place. It's War Thunder with the mighty Jingles. And War Thunder with the mighty ILLIIILLLLL doesn't really quite have the same ring to it. And within a couple of days of changing my name in War Thunder, my forum account synced up. And every time I post on the Gaijin forums, it was with this stupid bloody barcode name. And there's absolutely nothing. The forum moderators tried to help, but there is nothing they can do about it. And so, you know, you just can't win. But this is where things get interesting. And I'll explain what I mean. After a couple of days of looking at every single forum post I'd made, having this stupid bloody name on it, and you know, as a semi-famous YouTuber, your name is actually quite important to you, and I didn't mind playing the game with a disguised name, but elsewhere, you know, being able to post as Jingles is actually pretty important. And so I thought, screw it, I'm going to have to just go back and change my name back again. And in the 2 days since I'd changed my name to this disguised barcode thing, somebody else had taken the name Jingles. And the best that I was able to change my name back to was Jingles 7012345, or some crap like that. And this really pissed me off. However, there's a good ending to this story, believe it or not. This is not actually Jingles complaining. At the precise point at which I discovered that my name, Jingles, had been taken by somebody else, and I couldn't even get my own damn name back, either in-game or on the War Thunder forums, I was actually flying in fighter combat school with RAM JB, Bismarck, and Sidestrafe, picking up some tips for how to actually control your aircraft properly and maximise your energy efficiency while you're dogfighting. And Bismarck said, oh, that reminds me, I'd completely forgotten. I says, what? One of Bismarck's subscribers, in case you haven't heard of him, you know, I'm going to stick a link to his channel in the description of this video. He's a fantastic bloke. Very, very good War Thunder pilot. One of his subscribers had seen that I was changing my name in War Thunder. And the second the name Jingles was available, he had changed his name to Jingles. He had then messaged Bismarck telling him, if Jingles ever wants his name back, let me know, and I'm keeping the name safe for him. How awesome is that? You know, and it totally restored my faith in humanity. And of course, and within 5 minutes, we'd called this fella up. Bismarck had said, yeah, Jingles is here, he's changing his name back, can you go in and change your name back to whatever it was before? We said, yeah, sure, no problem. And within 5 minutes of being notified, I had the name back, and it totally restored my faith in human nature. So massive shout out to this just totally random anonymous player who went to the trouble of doing this for me. His name is Luftwaffe7, and he is an absolute rock star. He's completely restored my faith in humanity, that a complete stranger would go to the trouble of doing this for, I mean, he doesn't know me, I don't know him, he's not gaining anything out of this, and he went ahead and did it anyway. You are an absolute legend. Totally restored my faith in humanity. Thank you very, very much. Of course, the end result of this whole process is that I am right back where I started. I've gone through all this trouble and all this pain in the arse, and straight back. I may as well have not bothered. But you know, it's kind of, it's first world problems, really, isn't it? I'm having problems playing a computer game. You know, big deal. It's not like I'm struggling to put food in my children's mouths. Not that I have any children, but you know what I'm talking about. In the grand scheme of things, my problems are pretty small, and I really should stop complaining and just get the hell on with it. If for no other reason than as a way of thanking people like Luftwaffe7, who have gone above and beyond the Call of Duty to ensure that I can continue playing War Thunder. And so I will continue playing War Thunder, and I will just accept my relatively minor problems like a man, and stop whining and bitching about it and just play the game. Of course, the problems do still exist. I'm just going to stop complaining about them. But what it means to you guys is that previously I have been able to put up a World of Tanks video on one day, followed by a War Thunder video the next day, then a World of Tanks video, then a War Thunder video. That's not going to happen anymore. I'm not going to be able to put up as much War Thunder content because the problems that I have, relatively minor though they may be, do mean that I just can't get enough War Thunder games played to keep putting a War Thunder video up every other day. I highly recommend that if you love the War Thunder content, I mean, I'm still going to put War Thunder videos up, just not as often as before. But I do highly recommend that if you want your daily War Thunder fix, there are plenty of War Thunder channels out there offering quality content. Bismarck, RamJB, Krebs, even Sidestrafe has gotten the War Thunder bug, and he's playing a lot of War Thunder now as well. So there's plenty of other people out there. If you need a daily War Thunder fix, you're not going to get it here. It's going to be every 3 or 4 days, possibly even longer. Go and check out some of these other YouTubers. I highly recommend their stuff. Links in the video description below. Anyway, on with question time. First question this week comes from Rayin Then P, and he wants to know, Jingles, what's your opinion of other navies, like the US Navy or the Russian Navy? Yeah, the Russian Navy. Never, unsurprisingly, actually been on a Russian ship, although I've been on the gangway of a Russian ship. Years ago, I can't remember exactly when it was. It was probably around about 97 or 98. Shortly after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a Russian destroyer in Portsmouth on a goodwill visit. And it would probably come as no great surprise to many of you that this thing was rough. It was like the people who designed and built the T-34 tank from the Second World War had decided to build destroyers. This thing was poorly finished. The construction was rough as hell. I mean, they looked dangerous from a distance, just covered in guns and missile tubes, but the construction was basic. You know, the Russians have a proverb, better is the enemy of good enough. And you can see that in the design of tanks like the T-34. They could have built them better, but they didn't need to because they were good enough. You know, you compare the Tiger, which was ridiculously over-engineered, you know, typically German construction, way better than it needed to be, because the life expectancy. You know, what was the point in building gear bearings that were going to last for years when the tank itself was only going to have a life expectancy of 3 months? You know, that was the German way. The Russian way was to make it good enough. And they made 80,000 T-34s in the Second World War. They lost 70,000 of them, but they were good enough. And the Russian Navy was the same. And of course you have to bear in mind that failure was punished harshly in the Soviet Union. If you were in charge of designing, if you were given charge of one of the design bureaus and said go away and, you know, told to go away and build a new class of destroyer or a new class of fighter aircraft or submarine, it didn't pay to try to be too radical, because if you failed, failure was seen as treason and sabotage, and you would basically get packed off to the concentration camps. I can't remember the guy's first name, but you see it in War Thunder, the PE-2 attack aircraft and dive bomber. I think his name was Alexander Petlikov. He actually made most of his designs in a concentration camp after his first design failed, and he was charged and convicted of sabotage and wasting Soviet resources. That was the kind of thing that Soviet designers were up against. They couldn't afford to fail. So whereas in the West we were constantly trying new technologies, a lot of Russian designers didn't dare in case they got it wrong, and they ended up in a gulag. So instead of trying radical new technologies out, the Soviet designers would stick to tried and tested formulas and just gradually improve over the existing stuff. Yeah, good, you know, better is the enemy of good enough. The old Russian proverb, and that was pretty much what you got with the. I mean, the Russian Navy started from pretty humble beginnings after the Second World War, where it was pretty much no more than a coastal defence force. But by the end of the Cold War, well, not even the end of the Cold War, at the height of the Cold War, it was a relatively modern, very dangerous blue water navy. But the thing about all these these Slava-class cruisers and Submarine-class cruisers and Udaloy-class destroyers and stuff, was that they were quite literally, just good enough to do the job that they were designed to do, which was to deliver masses and masses and masses of missiles at the enemy. If you ever look at the design of these things, they were one-shot disposable missile launcher tubes with no reloads whatsoever, just lining the sides of these ships. And it was kind of like the Battle of Jutland in the First World War. A lot of the old British dreadnoughts did more damage to themselves from firing their guns than they ever received from the German Navy. And a lot of these ships that the Russian Navy had were kind of similar. That they would wreck themselves firing off all their missiles, but it didn't matter. That's what they were for. They were just there to carry these missiles into battle. Life is cheap and missiles are expensive in the Soviet Union. But it doesn't pay to underestimate the Russians. They were welding titanium-hulled submarines long before the West thought it was even possible. You can't weld titanium exposed to the air. It just doesn't work. You have to weld it with an inert gas, exposed to an inert gas like argon, for example. And knowing what they did of Russian manufacturing techniques, the West just didn't think it was possible to be able to weld large sections of titanium submarine hull in the dirty environments of Soviet shipyards. And despite all the evidence to the contrary, they just continued to believe that it wasn't possible for the Russians to do it. They weren't even doing it in the West with better facilities. Certainly welding small sections of titanium you could do in a clean environment, but the facilities that would have been required to do massive sections of submarine hull, they weren't doing it in the West, and they just didn't believe the Russians would be able to do it, but they were. Don't underestimate them. The Alpha-class submarine, first titanium-hulled, fully welded titanium-hulled submarine in the world, stronger than steel, 33% lighter. The Russians got there first. Despite their hesitancy to embrace new technologies, they did it. But the Russian Navy that I trained to fight against in the late 80s and early 90s was a bit of a paper tiger. I mean, they had 250 different classes of ships, and they didn't have the logistics facilities to support them all. They didn't have the money to pay their crews. This Udaloy class destroyer that visited Portsmouth when I was there, they hadn't been paid in 6 months. They didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. They weren't even allowed off the ship unless they were escorted by an officer, in case they were exposed to any negative Western influences. But the officers were the morale was so bad they didn't give a toss anyway. We actually felt so sorry for these guys. We would all club together to buy them pizzas and have pizzas delivered to the gangway, just so they could get a decent meal. The food on board their ships was horrible. The ships were horrible, dirty, the rough construction. It was, I would never have wanted to have served in the Russian Navy. Now, the US Navy, different matter. Now, you can say what you like about the US military, but they know how to look after their people. The ships are clean, the facilities are pretty good, they're well designed, they're not short of money, we'll put it that way. They've got sophisticated equipment, they're well trained, they're very capable ships. If you were to ask me what class of ship I would rather serve on out of any available in the world, I would go with the Ticonderoga class Aegis cruiser, because it's probably the safest thing to be on in the world in the event of a full-scale war. By contrast, at the time, the Royal Navy's air defence was the Type 42 destroyer. It had 2 radars, one forward, one aft, and a Sea Dart surface-to-air missile system, and it could track 2 targets at the same time and engage 2 targets at the same time, but it had to keep those targets illuminated with a radar, so if there were 3 targets coming in, you were stuffed. By contrast, I do not know the exact design specifications for the Aegis radar system on the Ticonderoga class cruisers, but those things could coordinate the missile defense of an entire task force and engage multiple, and when I say multiple, I'm talking like 20 plus targets at the same time. with a very high confidence factor of being able to shoot them down. Those things were amazing. Now, if you asked me to compare the US Navy to the Royal Navy, well, I couldn't really do it because I don't have much direct experience of the US Navy. But I know somebody who does. The novelist Tom Clancy is a big fan of the Royal Navy. Well, he's a big fan of the US Navy, the US Air Force, the US Army, but he's also a big fan of the Royal Navy and the Royal Navy Submarine Service in particular. And, he did a lot of good work, a lot of good PR, if you like, for the US military. And so he got access to a lot of stuff that other novelists perhaps didn't. There got a lot of doors shut in his face at the Pentagon by saying something on a chat show one day. I forget exactly when it was. It was several years back. And he was being asked about, because he makes no secret of the fact that he's a big fan of the Royal Navy Submarine Service. And he was asked if he could explain the difference between the US Navy and the Royal Navy. And I forget his exact words, but they were along the lines of this. And he basically said, well, the Royal Navy doesn't have the money or the resources that the US Navy has available to it. And yet it still manages to perform at the same level as the US Navy. And I can only put that down to the quality of their training and their people. Lost a lot of friends in the Pentagon the day he said that, did old Tom Clancy. All sort of things that were open to him prior to making that comment suddenly became unavailable to him, which is a bit of a shame. But there you go. Actually, related to this question, a lot of you have asked, have I seen the movie Battleship? Yes, I have, and I am very sorry about that. I'm not proud of it. I was bored. I had nothing else to watch. It is utter garbage. But it's a big, dumb summer action movie. It's based on a board game. I mean, how good do you expect it to be? And I was at least mildly amused while watching this thing. Right up until the point where I saw the battleship pull a handbrake turn. And no, I'm not joking. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly the part I'm talking about. It was just absurd. But one thing that struck me more than anything else watching that movie, and it's not just the Battleship movie, it's just about every single movie where the US military are involved. And this is not a criticism of the US military, this is a criticism of movies. There is always somebody who, when the bullets and bombs are flying all over the place, there's always a member of the military who says, I didn't sign up for this shit, man. Have you noticed that? It's not just me, is it? It doesn't matter what movie you're watching. Battleship, Black Hawk Down, makes no difference. There is always somebody getting shot at, hunkering down. And in the Battleship movie, it was, I don't know the guy's name, but he kind of looked like a sort of budget Matt Damon. He's there on the bridge of his cruiser with his flak vest and his Kevlar helmet, and he's manning a minigun, and the bad guys are shooting at them, and he's shooting back, and I didn't sign up for this shit, man. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did, actually. In fact, I think this is exactly the kind of shit which you did in fact sign up for. In fact, I think you're going to find that if you were to search the internet for a picture of the kind of shit for which you did in fact sign, it would be a picture of the scene in which you are loudly protesting that this is not the kind of shit for which you signed. It's almost as if there's some sort of massive conspiracy amongst Hollywood movie producers to try to convince the world that the US military is filled with people who just, don't want to fight, despite all evidence to the contrary. Well, unfortunately, folks, that's where I'm going to have to end this one. I have a blazing headache, and I was hoping to be able to put at least another 10 minutes of questions and answers onto this video, but I need to go to bed. I'm coming down with a really nasty migraine headache. I hope I'm going to be able to sleep it off in time for tonight's live stream with circumflexes, but I'm not 100% sure I'll be okay by then. Anyway, sorry about the, well, it's not that short a video. We're coming up 29 minutes here of this week's Mingles with Jingles. I hope you've been amused and entertained. As always, folks, take care on that battlefield. Watch your six, and I'll catch you next time. Oh, go on then. I'll leave this battle running so you can see how it ends. It was actually a decent match in the IS-7. Now at this point, I know that T95, I'm going to have problems penetrating from the front. So I'll load a 130mm high explosive shell, because he only has 138 health left. And remember, high explosive, folks, will always do damage if it hits and explodes. Oh, really, sunshine. Ah, great. Twice in a row. Not even 1 point of damage. I came around this corner on full health. Okay. Aim for weak spots then. And game over. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. Catch you next time.